Hello everyone, Jacob Shapara here with Zenith. Welcome to your October market update. This is going to be a bit more personal update, hence this is only me on camera here. Wanted to spend 5 minutes here with you because of all of the uncertainty here. It has been a grind this year. I want to talk why it's felt so different. There's two specific things I really need to hear as to why you're probably feeling the way you're feeling. I want to talk about where we're going from this point in time. I want to talk about historically to keep things into perspective because there is a lot of angst, there is a lot of panic, but markets are resilient. I want to show you some things to hopefully connect the dots so that you keep things into perspective. Let's begin as to why this feels different. This sell-off is different. When we talk about being diversified, being allocated, we always think about holding both stocks and bonds. This year, the stock market so far is down negative 25%. The investments that we're relying on historically to help us are bonds, which they're down 16%. There has only been 3 times in our history where both stocks and bonds finished down the same year: 1931, 1941, and 1969. As you can see from this chart, that dynamic typically does not happen. For this year so far, that's very much what has taken place. What you should take away from this is there hasn't been a flight to safety. There is really nothing that is making money. This will be the first time in over 50 years that that's taken place. Now think about that. Since 1969, if you're looking at this, if you are retired, you probably didn't have significant money that you're worried about back in 1969, maybe a little bit. And why I'm sharing that with you is you haven't felt that dynamic since you started to invest. It is different. It is new. It is unprecedented. And that is the environment that we're in right now. And second item is timeline. We've been slowly selling off since January 3rd of this year. We're going on almost 10 months of us feeling the markets continuing to sell off, and it's been draining. I'm there with you. Take this into consideration and let's look at the past sell-offs and how much time has lapsed between those. First one we go back to is the COVID crash in 2020. The market really started to deteriorate in early February. The markets discovered a bottom only 6 or so weeks into the sell-off. Now keep in mind, this 6 weeks we sold off over 30%. So think about the human element. When we were experiencing the sell-off, by the time you actually saw your account a couple months later, it was almost as if nothing happened. It was a very quick reaction. It took just a couple of months to get back to where we were. We almost didn't really feel the repercussions of that. So when you compare it to 9 months, COVID lasted just over a month. The second sell-off to refer to is the crypto crash of 2018, which occurred back in mid-September 2018, and we found the bottom Christmas Eve of that same year. So that took 3 months for that sell-off to take place, and the markets deteriorated 20%. So when you compare this to current situations of almost 10 months in, a 3-month sell-off is nothing. Last one I'll refer to is summer of 2015. The markets went down 15%, but it took 7 months for a bottom to be found. Now that is a bigger timeline, but the actual losses were dramatically less than where we're at right now, 10% difference. As you can see in this chart here, whether you want to quantify the feeling from a time perspective or how much we've lost, this current sell-off in 2022 is different. We're down negative 25%. Both stocks and bonds are down, and it has lasted almost 10 months. We haven't felt this type of environment in a very long time. There isn't any flight to safety. The duration of this is nowhere near what previous sell-offs have been, and it almost feels like there's no end in sight here. Now, what you should also take away from this is that markets are resilient. They do recover over time. And right now, the main message should be to endure these times right now. We're here for you. That's the whole point of us being here. Besides working behind the scenes and making changes to your accounts, we're doing that work for you. Please know that's only half of our work. The other half is to connect with you. The other half is to talk to you. The other half is to understand how you're feeling, and we make sense of it together. That's why we're here. That's why Zenith was created, to make sure that you got that personal touch. At the end of the day, here to talk to you. And we're going to get through it together. The question that we've mostly been getting is, so where do we go from here? I want to be realistic and give you a worst case scenario, our base case scenario, and our best case scenario. Our base case scenario right now is we do hopefully find a bottom here by the end of the year. It'll be some slow recovery. The month of October seasonally has been a great month for prosperity in the markets, but there's still some pain ahead potentially. For us to just shoot back up from this point in time, probably unrealistic. October is deemed as the quote unquote bear market killer. Best case, we do find some type of bottom here and we shoot straight up from here. Worst case scenario, brace yourself, is from this point in time right now, we could see another slide of negative 20% in the stock market. I won't go into the technicalities behind that specific number and why that 20% is. If you are interested, of course, we can hop on a call and I can explain this a little bit more in detail. Currently right now, the S&P 500 sits at 3,600, and we could potentially see, if we don't find a footing, the S&P 500 going down to around 3,000, regardless of how things play out. At this point in time, from a portfolio management standpoint, throughout the year, we've done it all. We've raised cash, we've bought investments that are more conservative, we've bought bonds that are less in duration. There isn't as much as we can do at this point in time, except one thing and one thing alone, and that is to be patient and stay resilient. So to recap, best case scenario, we find a footing here in October and slowly start to creep up. Best case scenario, we find our footing here and we shoot right up. And worst case scenario, we see the market slip another 20%. Lastly, I want to leave you with a little bit of hope, because as much as I want to look through the lens and make sure I make you feel good, I also want to make sure that we're realistic in this message and making sure that we act on what we know. And I've said it now a couple times, there is no argument that the markets are resilient. It's just a question of when they're going to find their footing. But there is hope in sight. So this last chart I'll show you actually looks at how the market has propelled when we've had an experience a negative 25% downside. And as you can see, with the exception of one scenario, and that was the Great Recession, all of the scenarios are actually pointing to a recovery within 1 year. All of the scenarios look at recovery within 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. Please make sure, if it's one thing you remember, it's this: when we find a bottom 9 months into this, we have to be a lot closer than we were 6 months ago. The markets will prosper. And when they do, they're going to prosper big time. And that's where we want to make sure discipline piece is front and center. Stay resilient, stay connected. I also want to take a moment just to express some gratitude. We really appreciate you being a part of Zenith. It is a joy to come in here every day and work on your behalf. We're in here working our tail off to make sure that we are taking the right actions in your accounts, and more importantly, we find a solution. Lastly, during these times of great uncertainty, we welcome introductions for people that you talk to within your circle of friends, your circle of colleagues, whoever it is, your family. There is a lot of uncertainty right now, and people do need to connect with someone to make sure they're making sense of it and making the right decisions during these times right now. Thanks once again for being part of Zenith. We look forward to connecting with you next month. Happy fall. We'll catch you next time. Take care.